talking about one of the bird is making the sound of yo-yo. And also this is a bird that loved to living in the area when Artemisia was growing. So what a coincidence. When she was born, she was given the name highly related to the plant. She was be able to get the Nobel Prize in future. So and in English, when the pronunciation is you. So one of the funny pieces they made online is that when they nominate for the Nobel Prize, they would say we are going to award the Nobel Prize Physiology and Medicine to you. And then the first person, and you, and you too, right? You too. And so that's one of the very funny part about it. But anyhow, she's actually one of the hundreds of the Nobel Prize winners in the medicine part, but meaning a lot to Chinese medicine, to the herbal medicine using in the world. Because before, everything was kind of like based on Western medicine discoveries or the experiments or the research. So this is the first time that we get recognition by one of the highest world award in the medicine on traditional Chinese medicine, herbal medicine using. So that's a big milestone for this field of the study. And so that's something about the Professor Tu. So here I would like to talk a little bit about the plant which contribute to the prize to the healing of malaria. So this is the Artemisia annua linet. And so the family is coming from the Asteraceae botany family. So like most of the daisy flower, that's coming from the same family. And so in Chinese medicine, it is the herb that we have studied from the category of treating deficient heat, Qing Hao, right? Qing Hao. So the herbal name is Qing Hao. And about the Chinese herbal name, it's very easily getting confused because in a lot of local area, Qing Hao is referred to various different type of Artemisias because we know that there are so many types of Artemisias. And so some of the places the Artemisia is not be able to extract it Artemisine or Artemisine, this kind of like effective chemical component. So the one that specifically has the effective anti-malaria component is called Huanghua Hao. That's a type. Huanghua Hao. That's a type of Qing Hao. That's a type of Qing Hao. So this is the one of the plant that has whole plant with very nice aromatic smelling. It's the type of like smell that similar to Artemisia, similar to oregano, and that kind of aromatic. Like a lot of like chrysanthemum and daisy flower all have that similar smell. And it has very tiny yellow blossoms. And also at the same time, the leaves are the ones that has very thin lesions on the leaves. And so this is one of the plant was not at the beginning being used as treating malaria. We know that before the Artemisia annua or the Qing Hao has been used, what would be the medicine we use treating malaria? It's also come from South American tree bark. It's called quinine or quinine. And so that was actually commonly used for treating malaria. It's also coming from South America. I also have a story of it because at that time there were Portuguese governors or Portuguese. It's their Concordia. They're taking over Brazil area.
Conquistadors.
Okay, so that's the area they take over there. So, but the thing is that a lot of people that they go to traveling or staying in Brazil, they had the malaria. The local people, the native people from Brazil, they are using one of the tree bark to making decoctions and using that to heal the malaria. And one of the servants from one of the family from Portuguese provide this medicine for them and helped with the malaria. Then it has been kind of bring back to European countries. They started the study, quinine coming out. So quinine was very effective for a while to dealing with malaria, but it has a lot of side effects. Especially quinine, this is the one that can pass the blood and fetus barrier, and it can cause contractions. It can cause contractions of the uterus and leading to miscarriage. It can pass through breast milk. So it has liver damage and also kidney damage. So has a lot of side effects, even worse situation that it can cause death. And the reason that we started to looking for the new substance be able to dealing with malaria, one of the main issue is because resistance from the malaria. So the plasmodium from the malaria started to kind of resist the effect of quinine. And so that's why we need to search for another more effective medicine be able to deal with this kind of issue. Of course, Professor Tu started to research for it because there was a little background. It was in the late 1960s, early 1970s. That's the time that Vietnam War happens. So actually, unfortunately, that's the war between U.S. and also China, and it is happening in the mountainous area in Vietnam. So in that area, it is humid and also warmth. A lot of soldiers and local people, civilians, they have caught malaria. It's spreading. So the government, the Chinese government, just like saying that we need to kind of find an effective way to control the malaria for the war and battle purpose. So that's why the project has been sent out through China and through all institutes and to kind of like search for the most effective anti-malaria treatment. So at that time, there were about 2,000 formulas, traditional formulas. Any little bit has mentioned to be able to dealing with the malaria symptoms and dealing with this kind of like alternate chills and fever with diarrhea, all being kind of like put it in as selection. So that's the initial project started. And about 640 herbs were included. So Qinghao is one of them. But Qinghao did not stand out because through all the selections and Qinghao extract didn't work well. Work well. So how could for the first round, Qinghao did not kind of like stand out from the selection and bring out becoming one of the most well-known outstanding medicine. It all kind of like benefit from one of the ancient book was written in 340 AD. 340 AD at that time. So this is one of the TCM doctor whose name is Ge Hong, this guy. And so he is a Taoist practitioner. So Taoist practitioners are the ones that are very good at to kind of like, it's more like, what would be the type of like professions in old medieval age that they would kind of play with like witchcraft type of stuff?
Alchemist.
Oh yes, alchemist. So the Taoist practitioners at that time was like really good at play like alchemist type of herbs, because for Taoist practitioners that they love to search for like the method for longevity. So he is the one that expert in herbal processing, 炮制. Herbal processing, we have mentioned that in some of the class, 炮制. So he wrote a book he wrote a book. 走后备急方. That's the book. That's the book. 走后备急方. So in one time, Professor Tu was reading, kind of just go back to all the classics. And it was probably like midnight. And when she was kind of like reading this book, she suddenly found out that there is a sentence described about Qinghao and saying that using a handful of Qinghao and soaking in water and then squeeze the juice, it can be used to treating malaria-like symptoms. And then she suddenly kind of like have chills coming out, and she said, actually for a long time we were doing the wrong thing. We were cooking the Qinghao, making decoctions just like the normal way we are doing for the Chinese herbs. So using boiling water and cook it for about 15 to 20 minutes in order to extract the effective component. But our ancestors was using the fresh Qinghao leaf, juicing it. There's no heating procedure. There's no water extract part in it. Then she kind of like said, actually we were going in the wrong direction. So from then, she find out that actually the effective component of the Qinghao artemisinin, and it was not water soluble, cannot stand heat. So instead of using water extract, she used ether. So this is the one that more dealing with non-water soluble, fat soluble chemical compounds. And so using the ether as one of the main extract solvent to bring out the artemisinin. And so after this change, totally changed the history of Qinghao's usage. So at that time, the ether extract coming out, they did several of the research, and in the 1971 they actually did preclinical research. So what we are talking about, the preclinical research over here is more animal based. So like every new patent or new medicines, when they are going to put it on for a clinical trial on human being, they need to go through a procedure of the clinical research. So generally speaking, that the first step would be safety, for safety. The safety research is the toxicity analyze. And we do have acute toxicity research part to check about LD50 and to give high dosage to mouse. And usually we call it SPF mouse. They are under the level of like standards of like very similar genetic produce, and at the same time not too much of the differences in their vitals and in their blood work, so we can have a very blank and even base for our study projects. And so to check about give high dosage, what would be the dosage reach to 50% of the death. So find out that actually Qinghao does not have has pretty good kind of like range of the dosage usage for acute toxicity. And also at the same time, we're going to do chronic toxicity treatment analyze. And so generally speaking, we are using rats, SD rats, and also sometimes dogs are going to be larger animal would be kind of included, because the larger size the animal, they have less kind of like differences, genetically differences and species differences comparing with the human body. So that's why a lot of times that we are going to use different species of the animals to do the selections and trial for the toxicity research. So go through 1 month, 3 months, 6 months of the chronic toxicity selection. It's safe. Qinghao is very safe. And so which actually give a very good optimistic for the researchers. This is something that even if it doesn't work, but it's not going to kill somebody, right? It's safe for using. And so they actually did several types of the treatment, find out that it's be able to dealing with the malaria Plasmodium burgei and Plasmodium cyanomogy, and parasitemia, 100% effective on rats. So which means that from the animal research, we find out that effectiveness is like very high. And so then in 1972, at that time, they give the pioneer pilot research case on 21 human cases, and find out that dealing with the tertian and tertian stage of the malaria, they are all effective and cure these all 21 cases. So at that time, this is the one that has been widely used, and they have been sending it to the Vietnam for the soldiers and for local people for the war. And after that, this is the one that has been put it into wide use in China. So that's why, although in the 1970s in China, all the the cleanliness and the food, the water was not as good standard at that time because the whole country was so poor after so many years of the war. So this is the one that actually helped to get rid of malaria situation in China. So when I was in college in the 1990s, when we studied about Qinghao, pretty much like every professor who's teaching the Chinese herbs would say that that's one of the biggest or one of the biggest contribution from the Chinese medicine study, herbal study, to the whole world. That even nowadays, although the English name of the component from artemisinin is called artemisinin, but they still using the Chinese pronunciation to name it, to name the extract Qinghao Su. And so that would be the procedure that we actually has been done in extracted the effective component. And that's why in the award, during the Nobel Prize award, Professor Tu said that the big thankful to Ge Hong, this person, that if without him, there would be no thinking about using ether extract for the Qinghao, be able to kind of like bring out this most effective component and bring it to using. Of course, it would sound like, oh, ether, this is something that would be kind of harsh to our body, right? Harsh to liver, and it's the one that can knock out people. You know, sometimes people do robbery, they kind of like use ether and put it down, people knocked out. And so, of course, after the extract, that's just one part that we are extracted out the effective component. We are going to evaporate the ether. And after that, we are getting the more purified of the artemisinin, this kind of chemical compound. And that's why when we were graduated from the college, because my major was in herbs, we would have like very specific kind of divisions for your future master degree. We do have like a herbal chemistry and herbal pharmaceutical, herbal processing, herbal pharmacology, herbal botany, and so different kind of like majors. Usually we would say people who choose to go with herbal chemistry were the brave ones. The reason is because actually you will see that so many kind of effective chemical compounds has been used and have been extracted out. In the procedure, they would contact with a lot of like very harsh and harmful type of like chemical compounds for the practitioners, and a lot of them that have like liver, kidney issues due to sacrifice their body in the research. Although we still have ventilation room to try to eliminating all this kind of like poison stuff, but still it's really harsh. It's still really harsh. And so, but that's also one of the very fun class to do. For example, we had like lab work in school, just like extracted caffeine from tea, from green tea. And also we are having the procedure done to kind of like get the volatile oil extracted from like a citrus fruit peels. So those are the different stuff we have done to kind of like using different chemical solvent to extract it. So nowadays, at her time, Professor Chu's time, these are all kind of like dark, and it's actually unknown. It's very new about using chemical study, chemistry study on the herbs to analyze all the plants or all those kind of information. Of course, nowadays, after so many years, the herbal chemistry has been developed so well, especially in China. The study using chemistry, different kind of methods study about herbs is so well developed. And so, of course, nowadays, if we're talking about that using ether extracted artemisinin, this is the one that actually nowadays everybody would think, oh, that's just like commonly thoughts, because this is the one contains like all volatile oil. This is the one that contains the lipid-based type of chemical compounds. But at her time, it was everything started from zero. There's not much studied about all these kind of herbal plants-based type of chemistry in it. And so this is the one that has been kind of like extracted out and being used, and that's just like one part, just like very tiny part of the chemical studies, and it has been kind of like done for Chinese herbs. She's the one being awarded with Nobel Prize. There are still a lot of like researchers in China actually contribute to the herbal using modernization application on the herbal using in the studies. And so of course this is the one that not just like one person, it's a whole teamwork to help to bring in the result. So nowadays the Qinghao Su, the artemisinin or artemisinin and cyanide, this is the one that has been widely used in the world, especially in Africa, especially West African area, where they have a lot of like the war and also hunger, and the living condition was like very poor situation. And so malaria is still one of the very active situation in Africa. Since 2000, that's the time that Chinese government have like bring in like communications and friendship relationship with African countries like Kenya and Ethiopia, and so that area. And so we actually provide free Qinghao Su medicine for them. You think, free Qinghao Su. One thing about Qinghao Su is also replace the quinine type is because it's so cheap. The whole procedure of extraction and the chemical compounds and the ether using and the different kind of like, because it doesn't need heat, and everything needs to be in the very low temperature procedure. It cannot stand too high of the heat. So less fuel cost makes this one of the medicine is like very low cost, affordable for most of the people in the world. And so that's why they are be able to give like more supply to African countries. Since 2000 there were about 240 million people benefited from the Qinghao Su for getting cure from the malaria. And that's also one of the reasons the Nobel Prize kind of like giving this award to Professor Chu and her team. The reason is because the life saving for human beings. And so that's the one has been used kind of like widely in African area. So TCM support and treatment acupuncture herbally in African has quite some history, years and history now, we do often kind of in Chengdu University, for example, we would have team send it to Africa, and everybody would say that one of the souvenir everybody had would be getting at least one time malaria attack. And so it's pretty much everybody when there would have experience of the procedure of malaria. And before, they were thinking about, getting malaria, that's life-threatening, and people can kind of have like frequent diarrhea and electrolyte imbalance and loss of the body fluid and death. But now it's just like something, I've got malaria. And so you can use like the Qinghao-Su, the extract of the Artemisinin annual, be able to heal and treat these kind of like issues. And so then one of the things we would a little bit worried about it is because the malaria plasmodium is also started to build resistance to artemisinin. So that's why in 2005 they started to kind of like build a combination therapy based chiefly on artemisinin and bring other kind of like herbally extract component into it, and to call it as artemisinin combination therapy. So that's a new therapy has been used right now to dealing with malaria and being also established by WHO, and it's in brief called ACT. So how could artemisinin be able to treat malaria is that when it goes into our body, it will start to create a kind of like free radical factors. So these kind of free radical factors is going to bind the malaria plasmodium. And so once it's binding, it starts to break down and eating the membrane system of the malaria plasmodium. And then it started to kind of like crush it, and in order to kill the malaria and to stop the malaria. So usually it's one of the medicine that we are going to actually do like a frequent taking during the first initial 5 days or week, and then to kind of like to scatter the time of taking and until all the symptom has gone. And so this is one of the this is the one of the medicine that nowadays not only used for treating malaria, and also find out that it has anti-cancer effect. The research has been done right now is using the artemisinin to try to treat the breast cancer, ovarian cancer, liver cancer. And also research is still ongoingly doing to see its kind of like anti-cancer effect for the rectum cancer. And so the research find out that it does reach over 60% effectiveness in treating or kind of like destroy the cancer cell. So actually a lot of like a cancer treatment type of like medicine chemicals are also coming from plant. For example, the Taxol, right? Taxol actually was coming from a tree. So that's the one that dealing with ovarian and breast cancer nowadays is one of the very commonly used type of like chemos. And so this is the one that right now the research is very popular and commonly used is to dealing with the cancer treatment. And also the treatment of the artemisinin or sinin is on ELS. The disease that commonly happens, ELS, right? So the one that female patient usually happens, that they would have the melasma going in, joints pain. Lupus, yes, sorry, lupus, yes. This is the one that nowadays find out that SLE, yes. And this is the one that nowadays that find out that it is effective for lupus. It is the one that effective for lupus, and actually has already been put it in clinical trial for lupus patient in the treatment. And also, we find out that this is one of the medicine that can go in taking part of our T cell immune system activities, and so could potentially deal with some of the autoimmune diseases and related issues. So those are the ones that the new research has coming out and bringing out in the Artemisian modern research. But definitely it's the one that originally used for malaria. So here are some of the more like the family members has been extracted out during the time for the Artemisian. So there are more byproducts coming out based on artemisinin. Nowadays find out that these are the ones that are getting also clinical effectiveness on dealing with cancer, dealing with dysentery, different kind of like diseases. So there are more studies that would be kind of like put on for these byproducts associated with artemisinin, Qinghao. And so this is the one of the great award and also give appreciation to Chinese herbal study. And so that's just like one part of the 1,000 research projects that we have been done for in the Chinese herbal studies. Chengdu University, this is the one that herbal or the herbology school is one of the strongest one in the whole in China. So that's actually one of the number one research in China on Chinese herbs. So when I was after high school graduated, I was in one of the class. They selected 40 students, actually in the end 39 students all over China, and we are in one of the class. It's called the Research and Education Base for Chinese Herbal Medicine. So when we in school, we have like really good opportunities, have all the experts and from all aspects giving us lectures and also studied about the TCM herb traditional way and also modernization way. And so like when after college, I was in started from during college, I was also in the study projects. We actually go through all aspects related, like I have mentioned, divided into herbal chemistry, pharmaceutical, and herbal pharmacology, herbal processing, and herbal botany. We have all these individual modules, kind of like in detailed study, and then in the end, you're going to choose the one that you feel you like it. So for example, my module I choose and majored in is the TCM pharmacology. So what we do is that we are going to getting the result study from the herbal chemistry group. They are going to first do selections. For example, I use water extract, alcohol extract, or ether extract, or different kind of like a solvent extract, using different kind of like method and to bring all these samples to us. And then we are going to usually in the double blind type of like a method, and to test first on animals and to see what would be the potential toxicity, and then does it have any kind of like a clinical effectiveness would potentially showing on animals or on the out-of-body research, for example, in the tubes. And so after that, we give the one that through the animal selected products. And for the next step would be clinical research. So the clinical research, we also divide it into 4 stages. Usually people would sign, or we need to have HIPAA, similar to HIPAA ethnic, kind of like a signature, or those kind of documents should be done perfectly. And then the first stage would be toxicity research. And so showing on human body if any kind of like toxicity would showing up. So that's why because they do pay pretty good for people who's going in to volunteer for this kind of like research. They pay higher for the level 1 or stage 1. And there's a reason over there, because that's the toxicity research part. And so once they have done for the human body toxicity research, then they would have like different kind of like effectiveness, and then they would have like showing way comparison with the commonly used Western medicine or commonly used already established medicine for the condition. And in the end, they would kind of like give all the hundreds of documents kind of concluded and send it to the SFDA, the Chinese FDA. And then once they give the proof, it's be able to kind of send to manufacturer that be able to kind of like start it to give the produce to using. So these would be the commonly kind of like used part. It sounds like just like few minutes talk, but it's the one that usually one project I would say that sometimes can last about 10 years to come for probably several kind of like generation of graduates be able to kind of like get the conclusion about finally one of them successful herbal extract medicine for using. And so that's actually one of the also very a lot of fun during the time of the research. For sure, sleeping pattern was like totally off schedule, because sometimes that the study needs to be done at the nighttime. Because my research project is usually rats. You know, rats, they are very active actually at nighttime. So you need to find out the best kind of like time activity related to different kind of species of the animal you're using. And so, and also sometimes that we need to kind of get a conclusion of the piles of the documents and do data analyze. So that's a lot of work to be done to kind of like get finally in these several pieces of paper of thing. And so that's why when Professor Tu get her award, everybody in the field was kind of like very happy, because it's one of the appreciation for hundreds, thousands of people who's working in this field. And also her you can see that her the beneficial of her project started in the 1970s. It's after about 30-40 years. Finally, she's getting kind of like appreciated by the one of the world top kind of like prize, Nobel Prize. So it's one of the very satisfying thing in the study. And so definitely, I know that here we do not have like too much of like how to say that condition be able to provide like the same like herbal chemistry or pharmacology or the pharmaceutical study over here. Because it requires definitely a whole lab building to be built up and abundant of different kind of like a big database. And so, but nowadays that we have more and more internationally built up from the research from China. So they have more and more English publications and articles and more put it on PubMed and different kind of like the medical database that you guys are be able to kind of like do some article research and to read more of the articles that on the study about all this kind of like information. And so I think that's pretty much it. Now would be question time. Anybody?
Does the Qinghaosu destroy the pathogen, or does it suppress the symptoms, and do you take it long term?
It actually destroys the pathogen. So you do not need to take it long term. So only take it when the patient is having malaria. Yeah. So that's the one that, because Qinghaosu has been used for treating malaria in ancient China. That's why it has been kind of like being selected in the project at the beginning But the thing is that after the modern chemistry research, it didn't show as effective as our classics book said. That's why they try to kind of read back those classics to see if anything we're missing. So Professor Tu find out that, oh, that's the method we are using in the extract. It's not exactly the same as what we are doing. That's actually also bringing one of the part is that nowadays a lot of times that we just like take it for granted, think that, oh, herbs is just like putting water and boiling. But the administration part in each formula is also very important. Like in formula class, I would often say is that if the herb was originally designed in pills, it must have their reason why it was designed into pills, not decoction. And also, if the herbs that they described it is that it's one of the powder, cannot stand long term of cooking, that's also one of the reasons, because in old times, the ancient practitioners, they already tried on human body, showing that this is the most effective method we're using. Take yin chao san as one of the example, right? If you cook yin chao san as the regularly 10 to 15 minutes, you're not going to treat wind heat attack. You have to copy exactly as the original book description, grind it into powder, and put it into boiling water until you smell aroma. Stop heating it, drink the tea. So short time cooking is required. So that's why sometimes that the ancient book, they are not have too much like lab work or experiment, but it's based on practice. Actually, that was an evidence-based study. It's the one that is through the experience. So they have their kind of like a reason, and they have their meaningful be able to use for so many years. So sometimes that you can get a lot of inspirations by kind of going back to see why Asian practitioners are using it and what exactly method and procedures they have been done using these herbs, which can make totally differences. Yeah. Okay. Yes.
I hope this isn't redundant, but can you just go over what channel in TCM energetics, what channels Qinghao enters and why it might take care of dysentery and why it might be for breast cancer?
It is the one that I think it's related, can have liver channel. And so it would going into the Jueyin and gallbladder. These are the two Jueyin and Shaoyang meridians. And so liver and breast, ovarian, these are the ones that are associated to our liver channel issues. So that's why it's be able to going into the liver channel and to help to, what do we say that it can help to eliminating deafness. So a lot of times then when cancer building to match with the TCM patterns, deafness flame is one important part. So that's why it's the one that be able to kind of going into our draining liver channel associated cancer issues.
Could it maybe be cautiously taken for preventative measures if you're going to a malarial-ridden place or cancer runs in your family or something like that?
Usually from TCM aspect of view that we would say no. The reason is because Qinghao, this is the one that still, no matter what, it's attacking and eliminating medicine. So you're not supposed to kind of long-term taking eliminating medicine if you don't have anything to let it to attack. So in TCM is that it's too aromatic. Strong aromatic consumes qi. So long-term taking, it can cause qi deficiency. So that's why it's not suggested that as like without symptom and during the Qinghao treatment. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're good?